In this video, we're going to find the area of the region bounded by the graphs y equal to sine of 2x, y equal to sine of x for x between 0 and pi. So again, let's graph this region carefully. This will give us a great idea how to set up the necessary integral to find the area. Our interval from 0 to pi will be broken down into standard subintervals. Pi over 6, this is pi over 4, pi over 3, pi over 2, 2 pi over 3, 3 pi over 4, 5 pi over 6, and pi. So the sine function is 0 when x is 0. It also is 0 when x equals to pi. At pi over 2, the sine function reaches its peak, or 1. So this is the graph of the sine of x function over this interval. Sine of 2x looks similar, but what we put inside the sine function is double. So for example, when x is pi over 4, 2 times pi over 4 is pi over 2. Sine of pi over 2 is 1. So sine of 2x reaches 1 when x is pi over 4. At pi over 2, 2 times pi over 2 is pi. Sine of pi is 0. So the graph intersects this point. At 3 pi over 4, if we multiply that by 2, we get 3 pi over 2. Sine of 3 pi over 2 is minus 1. So let's mark that here. At 3 pi over 4, it's minus 1. And then it comes back to 0 at pi. So this is the graph of the sine 2x function. Now, as you can see, the region enclosed consists of two parts. The left part marked by L and the right part marked by R. This point of intersection is critical, and the way I graphed it, I hope you can see even by inspection that sine of 2x equals to sine of x for x equal to pi over 3. And that's because if we plug in pi over 3 for x, the left-hand side becomes sine of 2 pi over 3. And that's equal to square root of 3 over 2. And then sine of pi over 3 also equals to square root of 3 over 2. So that is the value of x where the two graphs intersect. Now, over the interval from 0 to pi over 3, the top function is sine 2x. And the bottom function right here is sine x. Over the interval from pi over 3 to pi, the top function is sine x, and the bottom function is sine of 2x. And so the area that we want has to be two integrals. The first one from 0 to pi over 3, the top function sine 2x minus the bottom function sine x dx, plus the area of the right side, and that's from pi over 3 to pi. The top function is sine x minus the bottom function sine of 2x. If you just do this with one integral, say sine of 2x minus sine x, you will not get the right answer. You would get if it's sine 2x, you would get the left area right, but then you would get negative of the right area. And when you combine those two together, you probably end up with a negative answer that is not the area. So now let's integrate. The first integral, we get the integral of sine is minus 1/2 cosine of 2x. That's the integral of sine of 2x. Minus the integral of sine x, which is negative cosine. So this is plus cosine x. And this is evaluated from 0 to pi over 3. Plus minus cosine x plus 1/2 cosine of 2x evaluated from pi over 3 to pi. And let's carefully evaluate this. So plugging in pi over 3, we get minus 1/2 cosine of 2 pi over 3 plus cosine of pi over 3 minus, plugging in 0, cosine of 0 is 1, so that's minus 1/2 plus 1. That's the first integral. Let's go ahead and compute this. This is equal to cosine of 2 pi over 3 is equal to minus 1/2. So minus 1/2 times minus 1/2 is 1/4. Cosine of pi over 3 is 1/2, so that's plus 1/2. And then minus 1/2 plus 1 is positive 1/2, so minus 1/2. The two cancel and we end up with 1/4 for the first integral. For the second integral, we plug in pi and we plug in pi over 3. So first let's plug in pi. We get minus cosine of pi plus 1/2 cosine of 2 pi minus, plugging in pi over 3, minus cosine of pi over 3 plus 1/2 cosine of 2 pi over 3. So this is equal to cosine of pi is minus 1, so minus a minus 1 is 1. Cosine of 2 pi is 1, so this is 1 plus 1/2 minus cosine of pi over 3 is 1/2, so this is minus 1/2. Cosine of 2 pi over 3 is minus 1/2, so that's minus 1/4. So we get 3/2 and minus a minus negative 3 over 4, so this is plus 3 over 4. So that's 6 over 4 plus 3 over 4, which is 9 over 4. And the final answer is 9 over 4 plus 1 over 4, which is 10 divided by 4, or 5/2. The final answer, the area of this region